When a couple is getting divorced, dividing the equity in the home is a huge issue. It's often very emotionally charged, and it can create a lot of bad feelings among the family. After the children, typically the issues with the house are the biggest issues that we see in a divorce situation. So, before you decide how you're going to divide the equity in your home, first you're going to need to figure out a couple of things. The first thing is, what's the value of your home? Now, to do that, I recommend that you either seek a certified appraiser to help you with that. They can give you an appraised value, or you can use a certified divorce real estate expert like myself, and I can give you what's called a fair market value. And the fair market value is, what is a buyer likely to pay for your home at the current time? The next thing you're going to need to understand is, how much equity do you have in your home? And the equity is, what's the value of the home minus what you owe. So what you owe could be things like your mortgage, which is typically most of it for most people. But sometimes there are other liens against the property. Maybe you have a home equity line of credit, or maybe there's a tax lien or something like that. Some people that have installed solar panels, if there's a loan on the solar panels, there might be a lien against the property. Some people, if they've had work done on their property, there might be what's called a mechanic's lien. And that's typically removed when the work in the home is done and the final payment is made. But sometimes people forget about that, so it's something that comes up, and it's easily cleared up, but it is something that you need to consider. Maybe either you or your spouse maybe has a business and has taken out a business loan and used the collateral in your home as equity for that, so that might show up. So what we need to do is take all the liens against the property from what the value is, and then that's going to help you determine your equity. The next thing you're going to need to understand is, what are the needs of your children? A lot of times people make decisions based on what they think is in the best interest of the children. They want the children to stay in the home because that's what they're used to, and they want them to stay near their friends or near their family. So those are things that you're going to have to think about when you decide how you're going to divide the equity in your home. The other thing that you're going to need to think about is, what are the financial resources of each of you? Can one or the other of you afford to keep the home? Typically what happens is, if there's a mortgage, the person that's going to keep the home not only has to assume the mortgage, but then they're also, whatever equity is in the home, they're going to have to include that in the mortgage payment. So I use the example, let's say the home is worth $500,000 and you have a $300,000 mortgage. That means there's $200,000 in equity. So you get $100,000, your spouse gets $100,000. If one of you decides to keep the home, then that person is going to have to get a new mortgage for $400,000. Now with the current interest rates, sometimes that can be really hard, and the payments are a lot more than people were expected. So I always recommend that if that's an option that you think you want to do, then let me connect you with a certified divorce lending professional, and they can help you understand what your numbers are and if that is even something that's reasonable. A lot of people wait until way down the line before they take that step, and it's always best to get that up front so you don't spend a lot of time and energy and money trying to negotiate for something that might not be a possibility for you. The last thing that you're going to have to understand is, what's the value of your other marital assets? So sometimes what I see people doing is, they'll trade the equity in the home for some other marital asset. But before you decide to do this, I recommend that you talk with a certified divorce financial advisor, and I can recommend several of them to you. The reason you want to do that is, what seems like a fair trade might not be, because of potential tax consequences and other liabilities that might be associated with keeping those assets. So it's always best to speak to a financial advisor. They can help you figure out both short-term and long-term if that's the best choice for you. So what are some of the ways that the equity can be divided? Well, number one, you can sell the home and then divide whatever equity is in the home. So let's say again you sell the home for $500,000, and after all the payoffs there's $200,000 left, so you would each get $100,000 if that's the way you negotiated it. The other option, once you understand what the value is and what the equity is one or the other of you can decide to do the buyout. And remember, I talked about this, before you go down that path and say, I want to keep the home, I want to do the buyout, make sure it's something that's going to work for you and or your spouse. Because depending on what the market situation is at the time, if you wait, it could be like maybe the house is worth $500,000 right now, but if you waited another 6 months and let's say, there was some market crash that might happen and now maybe the house is only worth $450,000, but you waited because your spouse wanted to do the buyout, well, that might have cost you $50,000. So just be prepared for either of you to make sure that you're well qualified to be able to do that buyout before you just make the choice to go down that path. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is what we call an asset exchange. And again, if you're going to do this, sometimes it can be a good option for you, but you just need to make sure that you understand and that you're trading like for like. So, as far as tax liability and things like that. So again, please speak with a financial advisor and then they can help you figure out if it truly is, $500,000 or $200,000 equity in the home is worth the same thing as a $200,000 401k. Typically they're not, but a lot of people make the assumption that they are. So let's get you hooked up with a financial advisor and they can tell you what the best choice is. The last thing, we talked about this in some of the other videos that I've done, is that you can do a deferred sale. So you can decide to both continue to make the mortgage payments and all the other household payments until some future point in time. Maybe it could be until maybe one of you has rejoined the workforce, or it could be until the children have graduated from high school, or some predetermined time. And it works for some families as long as you have solid agreements in place and you understand who's making the payments and make sure that the payments are being made on time, because you're both going to be financially responsible for the payments. Whether you're supposed to make them or not, your name is still tied to that credit obligation. So you definitely need to make sure that the payments are being made on time so your credit is not impacted by that. So ultimately, the best way to divide the equity in the home is for you and your spouse to come to an agreement between the two of you on what's the best thing for the family. So like I said, it could be one stays and one does a buyout. It could be that you just both decide to sell. Whatever it is, it's always best if you can come to an agreement, because if you can't, you're going to have to get your attorneys involved. And if attorneys can't help you reach an agreement, then you're going to have to go to court, and then the judge might decide, and he might decide something that neither of you like. So I always recommend, again, speak to your attorney, try and come up with an option that'll work for both of you. Well, again, every case is different, so I always recommend that you start by seeking the advice of a certified divorce real estate expert like myself. We can sit down and help you go through the different options, understand what the pros and the cons are, and then we can suggest other professionals that you might want to speak to before you make decisions about how to divide the equity in your home. Well, if you have any questions about your real estate holdings, how it works, what the process is, please reach out to me. I'm here for you. I want to be able to answer all your questions. And I do upload a new video every week, so if you hit that subscribe button, you'll get notified. And if you hit that bell icon, you'll get notified right away as soon as they're uploaded, so you can go watch the next video. And one more thing, if you found this video helpful at all, can you go ahead and hit that like button? Because what that'll do is help other people find this video And that way, they'll get the answers to their divorce real estate questions as well. Thank you.